Hey guys, welcome to Executive Espresso. It is so good to see you here today. I'm not sure our guest is going to be able to make it. I think he may have run into some technological difficulties, but such is the case when you're doing things like this. There's snow on the ground here, uh, power lines are freezing, data lines are freezing and snapping. So who knows? We hope Tim as well, and we'll schedule him for an appearance on Executive Espresso in the future. But I'm going to spend some time with you guys because the show must go on. So I encourage you to join in the conversation. I'm going to be looking at the chat down there. If you have questions I can answer, I'm not the expert, Tim is. But if there's questions I can answer, I would love to have you share those in the chat. Share some discoveries that you found. I'll pull those on screen. But today we're going to talk about the startup engineering mindset. What are about a half a dozen game changing strategies for founders that I found people benefit from? And so just to get started, realize that most startups don't actually fail because of bad ideas. Certainly, there's a lot of bad ideas out there. I think that you have to weave your way through the bad ideas to get to those really world changing great ideas. But most startups fail because of poor execution. But what if you could actually engineer that success? So, in the next 15, 16 minutes, we're going to cycle through a few things that I think a startup engineer could use and how to treat your business as a system that can give you the competitive edge. And so, drop in the chat which of those six strategies, six areas that are your biggest challenge today. And I'll be sipping on some nice apple cinnamon tea while we're talking when I take a minute to catch a breath. But let's talk about the startup engineering mindset. I think it's helpful to think of your business as a system. And success really comes from all the different components, all the different systems within that larger macro system working together. But to get there, you have to optimize each component. So, what about treating your startup like an engineer would in designing a well-oiled machine, a well-oiled vehicle, realizing that every part needs to work efficiently? So, you don't have time to look at everything at once. So you may have to take those things one at a time. For example, I love how Elon Musk applies what he calls first principles thinking. And that is breaking down a larger system into smaller fundamental components, smaller individual fundamental truths, and instead of just copying what other people do or thinking that because it works for somebody else, it's going to work for you. It's really about the congruence of a particular part of your system with the overall system. That's why it's not plug and play. What works for Amazon in a certain aspect may not work for you. What works for another influencer on a social media platform may not work for you. So here's something that, my dad would call it shoe leather psychology, putting some shoe leather on it, getting down to earth. Why not map your business like a flow chart? Start with inputs, processes, outputs. Look at some bottlenecks, look at where there may be inefficiencies. Everything could stand to be improved, even house cleaning and dishwashing, taking the kids to school, getting ready for your work day, starting out on the right foot, getting a great start in the morning by tackling and accomplishing something. Every system, no matter how big or how small, can be improved, and therefore every system is also going to have bottlenecks. What are some of the bottlenecks? What can be automated in your business and what can be streamlined? We were going to talk with Tim about this. As I say, he's got much more experience, but what about funding? What about funding without falling into traps? And I think that the investors I work with, the entrepreneurs that I work with, they found that the wrong investors, even if people are throwing money at you, doesn't mean that they're the right investor in your company. Instead of just being vetted by your investors, you really need to vet who those investors are. Because if you pick the wrong investors, investors that are misaligned, investors that are not congruent, not synergizing, not on board with the mission, vision, and goals of your company, well, that can cost you more than just equity. A common mistake that I've seen and run into and heard of is that founders will be so thrilled with getting that investment that they'll give away too much control early on. And this leads to misalignment between the founder, the inventor, the innovator, and those investors. I think that this is what happened with Steve Jobs when he lost control of Apple way back in 1985. Was not over he didn't have great ideas. It wasn't over he didn't have a great product. He did, actually. I have one sitting right here. But it was investor conflicts, and that's a proposition, really an equation of not being aligned. So instead of letting investors just vet you and look into you, why not look into them and see if they're a right fit for you? If you're taking on a client, for instance, if you're a coach like I am, if you're a clinician, I'm also a clinician. If you're a business owner, I'm also a business owner. This goes too for taking on a new customer or taking on a new client, because you can really head off conflict at the front door by seeing what is being expected and whether you believe that your brand can really deliver on what's being presented. Don't get too excited to grab at every handful of cash, because you may give up more than you're getting. And so early on, use the 3C investor fit test. 3C investor fit test. Do they bring cash? Do they bring connections? And do they bring clarity? And you might think that the cash and connections are the most important, but I think that it's really secondary to clarity. The reason that they want to invest in your business, the reason that they want to be a customer, because if they're not clear on why they want to be a customer or an investor at the front door, then you're soon going to find them going out the back door because of lack of congruence, lack of synergy, symmetry. And so set clear terms on control, who's going to do what, when they're going to do it, decision-making power. And you might say, you mean, what about decision-making power in coaching and consulting? Well, I'm clear with what I have power over, and I like to be clear about what I don't have power over. And so I have a pen with which to take notes, but that's not a magic wand. People will come to coaching and people will come to consulting thinking that the coach or the consultant, the business consultant, the business strategist can just make all their problems go away. So I think that being clear on what you're capable of and being careful not to oversell. As a dear friend of mine says, always undersell and overdeliver. Under promise and over deliver. So cash, connections, clarity. Of those three, I think clarity is the most important. Number three, how do you de-risk your business model? Well, risk is inevitable. If you don't enjoy risk, well, as I say to many people, McDonald's is probably hiring every day somewhere near you. And so if you're going to step out there on a limb and start something new, risk is inevitably not only an ingredient of that, but I think in some ways one of the most important ingredients. Because if you're not hungry, you're not going to have the energy, the fuel that it takes to get up those early mornings when you're really, really tired, to work those late nights when you have a little bit of what's it called, sleep vengeance or something like that. You think you've missed out on the day, so you want to stay up, but you need to get in bed, or you do need to stay up, but you think you just can't take any more. I believe in being in tune with your body's needs, with your mind's needs. But the thing that risk brings to my life is that extra little bit of jet fuel to outwork everybody else. And so here's a risk mitigation framework. Number one, and I'll give you four of these. Number one, cut out unnecessary complexity. I hear a lot of talk about overthinking when it's really underthinking. It ignoring important aspects of a situation. Let me be more precise. You find yourself thinking about this thing when really you should be thinking about this thing or considering that thing. And so it's drilling down to not what is everything that I'm thinking about, but of that blizzard of thought processes, what are the most important high value things that I'm thinking about? Number two, reduce, lower the stakes of potential failure. And so, if it's really kind of a balance between, of course, return on investment, a risk benefit balance. And so, it's not quite like going to the casino. There is risk, but it is informed risk. It is risk that is founded on doing your homework, doing your research. Number three, transfer. Use contracts, insurance, partnerships to kind of mitigate risk by others taking some of the risk on. And part of that is the risk of overwork. You know, you can't do everything. And so you're going to need to assign some things to some other people. Hey, there's Torsen. Hey, good to see you, Torsen. Good to see you on today. You guys invite some friends, and like Torsen, put a comment down there. And we'll be finishing up here in the next few minutes, but I'd love to have some questions. And it's good to see, yeah, there's Lauren. Thank you so much, Lauren. You're exactly right. Risk versus reward, it really is a tricky balance. I think the thing that I've found is the more you see it as a part of your business strategy, like it's really the mathematics of risk versus reward. And like any calculation, I think the more you do it, the better you get at it. Now, here's one thing that's going to get in the way. And of course, one of my favorite words, because it's one of the top cognitive distortions in my field of psychology, cognitive behavioral psychology, and that is catastrophizing. When you catastrophize things, when you start to see trying to, mediate that delicate balance between risk and reward as the problem, see, that seesaw is not the problem, but how you think about that problem is usually the problem. When you start to catastrophize it, you're actually shutting down areas of your brain that are meant to get really, really good at that, because you're igniting other areas of your brain that are really just meant to help you run away. So you can't solve problems while you're running away from problems, especially in innovation, entrepreneurship, and founding companies and things like that. So we talked about eliminate complexity, simplify it. If you stand back and take a look, things often aren't as complex as we make them seem. I talked to a client one time that was in a business that I thought, gosh, man, how did you get into this business? How did you even get experience about this? This is not your background. He decided to get into a completely different area of business than he'd ever done. And he said one of the most intelligent things I've heard a founder say. He said, Heath, he said, all businesses at a grand scale work by the same principles. It's really just great business and leadership principles. And when you develop great leadership and business principles, you can apply that to harvesting hay, to building rockets, to running banks. And so cut out unnecessary complexity. We talked about reducing risk by actually taking your hands off the wheel with some people you can trust to be a mini you or an AI twin or something like that. And hey, by the way, Tim is in the room here. So actually, let me go back here and get him on screen. Let's see here. Give me a moment. You guys are going to see me work behind the scenes here to get Tim up here. Hey, Tim, man, it's like what we say in Arkansas. I started without you, and so it's good to see you here today. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, you're still muted. I'm not sure what the issue is with your mic there, but if you can hear me, we can't hear you. Check those mic settings there. We'll get it worked out. You gotta love technology, right? How about now? Oh, not yet? I'm going to put some more things on screen there. Lauren says, this is when anxiety and depression come into play, very much found in self-discrepancy theory, which are the difference between our actual idea. Yeah, exactly, Lauren, exactly. I think we all carry that around in our head. We kind of have an idealized self, and then we have an actual self, and we come to see that the differentiation between those two is a bit of a problem, a bit of a catastrophe. And so thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. I'm going to try to get Tim up here. We're going to see when he logs back in. Hey, Tim, let's see if you have sound now. Oh, not yet. I'm going to check and see if it's a setting. Let's see. I'm checking to see if all my settings are okay. You can hear me, but I can't hear you. So there's nothing like doing this on the fly, folks. You're getting a behind-the-scenes look at Executive Espresso and all the struggles that we live streamers often have. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but output, overlay, source, everything on mine looks okay. But then again, I'm not a big tech guy. I just kind of do psychology and do this on the side. But I tell you what, Tim, let's do this. Let me go ahead and wrap up the show that we started, and then I'll get with you in just a minute and we will work that out. But who knows what's going on, but we'll get it worked out. The last one of the four guys is monitor, track key risk indicators. How do you know when something is risky for your business? How do you know when something is not working out for your business? I would call it a early intervention plan for your business. What is your early intervention plan? How do you track when something is not going right and then you get it right? And again, you need to have more sets of eyeballs than just one. For instance, Netflix switched from DVD rentals to streaming by not just rolling it out and letting it fall where it falls, but rather in testing it in phases. And so sometimes there's wisdom with moving fast, but sometimes there's much more wisdom in starting low, rolling it out at a low rate, and going slow. Start low, go slow, beta test it, whatever, send it out to people. I see people doing that all the time, but it doesn't do any good if you don't have a way to gather the data. So here's what I'd recommend, and that is identify your top 3 biggest risks in your business. What are the top 3 things that could interfere with you monetizing, with you keeping key people, with you not just acquiring customers, but keeping customers? It's one thing to recruit. It's a whole other thing to retain. It doesn't matter how many customers you recruit in the front door if they're just going out the back door. And so we're going to wrap it up here, guys, but I want to pull a few more quotes on a stage here because I think they're really, really good. Torsten says the approach to the problem is often the bigger problem. Absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't do any good if you're trying to tighten a bolt if your approach to it is using a screwdriver. So you must choose the right approach. You must choose the right tool for the approach. Torsten also says brain mapping for the flow. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really a top level thing to get in touch with how you're thinking, and your thinking is a tool, but sometimes our thinking can be the problem, as Kahneman and Tversky found, with a lot of heuristics, a lot of ways of thinking that just don't serve us well. And let me see if there's other quotes here before we kind of wrap it up today. Torsten is saying mic check. Richard, only when it works, Dr. Heath. Yeah, hey, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You can kind of roll the dice. And Let's see, the Acadian Carpenter. Hey, I love the handle, man. The Acadian Carpenter. How cool is that? Is this that guy from X? Well, Tim is that guy from X, and we'll have him on in a future show. Okay, we'll get all the technological difficulties worked out. But guys, I want to say how much I appreciate you being here today. But just as a brain affirming, game changing executive affirmation. Try this out for a game-changing executive affirmation. You can choose your own. But your brain really does need a success operating system. Yeah, that spells SOS. A success operating system. Your thoughts shape your decisions, and your decisions shape how successful your startup is. Your thoughts shape your decisions, and your decisions, the buck stops with you. Your decisions shape how successful your startup is. So here's that affirmation. Every problem, say this to yourself in the mirror. Write this down. Put it on a recipe card because it's a recipe to success. Put it on the visor of your Tesla or something, of your Cybertruck. Every problem has a solution. I am resourceful. I am adaptable. And I am committed to growth. You know what? If you'll take a cigarette approach to that, there's 20 cigarettes. I had the lovely Yvonne on with me last Friday. We're talking about, of all things, I pointed out that cigarettes have 20 cigarettes to a pack because that's about the number of cigarettes it takes to form a habit. And so why not use that approach for this affirmation? Pull that recipe card off of your visor, the thing that keeps sun out of your eyes. And before you get out of your vehicle to go into work, read it to yourself 20 times. Before you go to bed at night, smoke another pack of positive affirmation. Every problem has a solution. I am resourceful, you say to yourself. I am adaptable, you say to yourself. I am committed to growth. And are you committed to growth? Do you want the reward before you get the commitment? Do you want the growth without the commitment? Listen, there is no growth that comes without commitment. And so we covered several areas today. Didn't make it through them all. But we hope that you can level up your engineering mindset, mitigate some risk as much as possible, get out there, do the work. Startups aren't built on luck, they're built on systems. And so it's up to you to engineer your systems for success. If you guys want a deeper conversation, hop over and join my Mindset Masterclass. That is school.com/mindset. School, that's spelled SKOOL. School.com/mindset, where we talk about things just like this at a deeper level. Come join the conversation. I've got a free membership waiting just for you. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next Friday on Executive Espresso. Bye-bye, guys.